People ask me all the time where I'm living, and naturally I can't say, but it's a good place to hide. And there was an island that I had learned about a long time ago, and I guess I always knew that someday I'd probably have to use it. Anyway, I must have spent a year on the island. I started traveling all over the world, and it's been enjoyable, but it's been a constant battle of growing beards and this and that to keep from being recognized. And I guess about 2 years ago, I went to Europe, which is something I've always wanted to do, something I've wanted to do for a long time. I realized that sooner or later, it's probably going to end. You know, I hate to think that it's going to end, but I know sometime the secret has got to be let out. If it hadn't been for getting involved in what I'm involved in now, you know, things as such, maybe it'd been different.
Well, I think that last statement speaks for itself. But, Maria, let me ask you about some of the other things that we heard. Prior to his death, had Elvis ever spent a year on an island, any island?
No, he didn't. He never spent a year away from the public eye. He was in the public eye all the time. We would have heard about it.
All right, when Elvis was 24, we know that he was in the Army and he went to Europe. But did he go to Europe 2 years before that?
No, the first time he went to Europe was when he was going to Germany in the Army in 1958.
Now, so far, we've introduced you to witnesses who believe that Elvis Presley was not really buried in August of 1977. We've also presented evidence that Elvis Presley has been seen on multiple occasions, and perhaps most importantly, we presented what appears to be physical documentation that Elvis has been photographed and recorded. Now, let's make an assumption for a moment. Elvis Presley staged his own death. Why would a man blessed with wealth, fame, extraordinary talent choose to vanish from the public this way? Just who was Elvis Presley? A rock and roller, movie star, devoted father, world-famous celebrity. There was the public Elvis, and then there was the private Elvis. Two of his favorite hobbies were law enforcement and religious studies. Both of these passions may have inspired the chain of events that took place on August 16th, 1977.
Before Elvis Presley wanted to be a singer, he wanted to be in law enforcement. By 1970, Elvis had received many honorary and real law enforcement credentials and was convinced that he had unique services he could offer his country. And being Elvis, he decided to get what he wanted by going straight to the top. In December of 1970, Elvis flew to Washington, D.C., writing a letter en route to then-President Richard Nixon.
Dear Mr. President, first, I would like to introduce myself. I am Elvis Presley and admire you and have great respect for your office. I talked to Vice President Agnew in Palm Springs 1 week ago and expressed my concerns for our country. The drug culture, the hippie elements, the SDS, Black Panther, etc., do not consider me as their enemy, or as they call it, the establishment. I call it America.
In this letter, Elvis volunteered to become a federal agent, saying his contacts with the youth culture would allow him access into worlds that other undercover agents could only dream of penetrating. After the letter arrived at the White House, some of Nixon's aides debated whether it would be in the president's interest to meet with Presley. Here is the memo that decided the issue. Nixon took the advice and decided to meet with Elvis to give him the credentials he wanted. Elvis got his wish, a presidential appointment as a secret DEA agent. Some feel that Elvis was just playing make-believe, But it has been verified that Elvis allowed an undercover agent to infiltrate his road crew from 1974 to 1976. What was that secret agent investigating? Nobody will say for sure. At this same time, Elvis had become immersed in writings dealing with human spirituality and religion. Perhaps the most widely known entertainer in the world, Elvis was able to keep both of these sides of his personality a secret to the general public. His spiritual side he kept secret because he wanted to. His undercover life he kept secret because he had to. And this brings us to the FBI files. According to the records, there are more than 1,400 pages of files on Elvis Presley. The first stems from a citizen complaint in 1956 reporting Elvis's bad attitude. The last report was made in 1983 and describes the sale of a car that allegedly once belonged to Elvis. But by far the longest and most significant document covers the years 1976 to 1982. Containing over 1,000 pages, it concerns a criminal investigation and a man named Frederick Peter Pro.
In order to make sense of these documents, we've invited one more distinguished guest to join us. His name is Luc Dion. He's from Quebec, and Luc formerly worked for the Quebec government, but for the last year, he's dedicated much of his spare time to uncovering the working of Operation Fountain Pen. Now, trying to condense 1,400 pages of FBI files is a daunting task, but Luc has managed to prepare a short-form version for us. Welcome, Luc. All right, Luc, to summarize, what do you think happened to Elvis Presley?
Well, I think that Elvis got involved in a very dangerous FBI undercover operation, and in order to protect himself, a member from his family has to arrange his disappearance.
All right. Well, let's start at the beginning. What you're about to see has been verified by recently declassified government documents and Luc Dion's own extensive research.
Our story begins in May of 1976, when Elvis wanted to sell one of his airplanes. Besides the famous Lisa Marie, Elvis owned 3 smaller jets: a Lockheed Jetstar, a Jet Commander, and a Dassault Falcon. In early 1976, Elvis told his father, who handled all of his personal finances, that he wanted to sell the Jetstar. Vernon was loyal to his son, but was apparently not a very good businessman. Vernon was introduced to a man named Frederick Peter Pro in May of 1976. Pro talked Vernon into getting involved with a very complicated leasing arrangement with his company. The Jetstar wasn't airworthy, and Pro also said he would facilitate repairs. But Frederick Peter Pro was, in reality, a con man, a member of a criminal group called the Fraternity, a group with direct ties to organized crime. It has been estimated that the Fraternity managed to con at least $2 billion from people all over the world. And by the spring of 1977, according to an attorney familiar with the case, the Presley estate had lost more than $1 million.
Well, aside from Elvis being a victim of the Fraternity, how does the Presley case relate to Operation Fountain Pen?
At the time that Presley was defrauded by those con men, the Federal Bureau of Investigation were involved in a highly confidential undercover operation called Operation Fountain Pen regarding the illegal activities of a group of con men called the Fraternity that comprised approximately 30 to 40 of the world's top con men.
What's the importance of the Presley case in Operation Fountain Pen?
Well, the Presley case was the catalyst case for the FBI to stop temporarily the illegal activity of at least 2 members of the Fraternity.
What do you mean temporarily?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Fraternity was an organization that comprised 30 to 40 of the world's top con men. Now, the Presley case involved only 2 members of the Fraternity. Now, this organization was still going around, you know, everywhere around the world, defrauding people after the Presley case was done. But temporarily, they succeeded in stopping the Fraternity.
The following is a chronology of the documented evidence that some believe have resulted in the staged disappearance of Elvis Presley.
On March 4th, 1977, Elvis took his last leisure trip with his friends. According to several people, Elvis behaved unusually, almost as if he was saying goodbye. June 29th, 1977, Elvis gave his last concert in Indianapolis. July 26th, the FBI signaled that the investigation into Frederick Peter Proe finally had enough evidence to go to the grand jury. Early August, Elvis desperately tried to reach President Carter to discuss some urgent personal business. August 15th, United States Attorney Michael Cody advised the FBI that his office was ready to go before the grand jury with the Operation Fountain Pen case. August 16th, Elvis Presley is reported dead at Graceland. October 18th, 4 alleged members of the fraternity, including Frederick Peter Proe, were arrested in connection with the Presley fraud case. Could this investigation have led Elvis Presley to fake his own death?
Do you think it was dangerous enough to justify a sudden disappearance?
Well, that's the point. If you look at the criminal background of certain individuals who were involved in the Presley case, it would be highly justifiable.
Do you think that Elvis was put under the witness protection program?
Well, the fact that the 2 members of the fraternity who were involved with Presley in the Jet Star deal were themselves put under the witness security program is something in itself. If it was dangerous enough for the prime suspect to be put under the witness security program, it was surely good enough for Elvis Presley as the main victim to be put under the program. But Elvis Presley was a federal agent. There's no doubt about that.
All right, Gail, what do you think of all this?
Well, there is no doubt about it. Elvis Presley was a federal agent. His power and clout went to the White House. President Nixon made his appointment. We also know by records that Elvis Presley received a call from President-elect Jimmy Carter at the end of 1976, and President Carter wanted to appoint Elvis to a special commission in the Carter administration. Another call was placed by the FBI between President Carter and Elvis on August 15, 1977. Elvis's name is listed in the Justice Department's Black Book as a federal agent. Plus, there's books at Graceland that seem to be clues. And during Elvis's last concert tour, he made some very strange remarks on stage. It sounded like he was saying goodbye. He would say things like, "I am," and "I was." And he also said to the audience, he said, "I may not look good tonight, but I will look good in my coffin."
Well, couldn't all of this simply mean that Elvis planned to take his own life? It was suggested that he was deeply upset over a lot of books that had recently come out.
Anyone that knows anything about Elvis Presley knows he was very religious. He's even made statements that suicide was immoral. However, everyone knows how Elvis felt about his 9-year-old daughter, Lisa Marie. That was the longest visit she had at Graceland at that time. She was there. The only other bedroom upstairs at Graceland is Lisa's. Do you really think that Elvis Presley would chance his daughter finding a suicide body? And beyond that, Elvis Presley, on the evening of August 15th and into the early hours of August 16th, made an emergency dental appointment to have some work done. That doesn't sound like a man who was planning to take his life in a few hours. Maybe he was planning death, but not suicide.
All right. Let us assume that Elvis did not take his own life. Let us also assume that Elvis did not die of natural causes. Now, do these FBI documents ever mention anything that suggests that Elvis Presley did not die August 17th, 1977? Luke, I put that to you.
Well, when you closely examine those documents, we can find numerous notation and correction that has been made in what I believe is Elvis's handwriting. And I think that I'm almost positive that Elvis Presley continued his involvement in Operation Fountain Pen for several years after his alleged death.
Okay. Now, we brought these documents to handwriting analyst Paul Wiest. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Wiest.